18, and then the present building was 1840-48. Flying down 3D, we can go down to street level, and we can visit a 3D rendering. Let's see if we can fly down to street level down here. John Street. Swing around. Flying down to street level here, you've got the John Street United Methodist Church, and that's it in its 3D rendering. And a couple of photos there. 44 John Street. This building was from 1841, and it places itself as one of the oldest buildings, and it is the oldest congregation in America that still exists today. The building is not the oldest, but the congregation has been in the same place since the 1760s. They date their congregational beginnings to 1766, but the building actually comes from 1768 there. Let's see if we can get a street view. So that's the street level view there, and if you go back, you can see the map here, and we'll push on. I have some virtual tours that you can take of John Street in my Blackboard site, which I'll show you shortly. But you can see here that this building here has some rich associations with the earliest part of New York. You'll notice that there's no steeple. It was against the law of the colony, which was still Dutch oriented to the Dutch Reformed Church enfranchisement. A dissenting church like the Methodists, who were not Dutch Reformed, had to be set off the street without any steeple or bells there. And you can see here there was originally a parsonage for the preachers, which usually was Embry and Webb in the period of 1767 and 1768. If you go to our Blackboard site and look under Lay Beginnings of American Methodism, I have a number of sites here that will recapitulate the material that we've looked at today. Strawbridge's Meeting House, some images of Heck and Embry, the famous card game here, kind of interesting. Here's Captain Webb in a color pastel format. You get to see his regalia there. Here's Webb in his work in the rigging loft. I've often thought these people are either under conviction or falling asleep, but since he was such a fiery preacher, that's not the case. And these guys here are giving the sign of peace there, either that or sharing some gang signs there. I don't know, that's just me thinking out loud. Again, the work of Webb itinerating throughout Long Island to Albany, New York, and all the way out to Philadelphia. Webb is able to itinerate, as we'll see on the map, and is able to rekindle some of the Methodists who had been converted under George Whitefield in Philadelphia and start a important society in Philadelphia as well. So Webb's work weaving throughout is important. Weaving the connection tighter. This was something I did a long time ago, and this is a little bit too graphically detailed, but you can see St. George, the Philadelphia Old St. George's Church, which is actually Captain Webb is able to purchase from a German Reformed church, 1769, and is able to begin the building up of Philadelphia Methodism as well. This is just a very large timeline that I did for my book originally, and it's a little bit too graphically busy, but you can see the 1760s Methodism really begins to set its roots down through the lay immigrant initiatives. This is prior to the American Revolution, which begins in 1775 and concludes in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. So just to give you kind of an outline of where Methodism arrives, it arrives pre-Revolutionary War period and will be tested, and we'll look at that in our next session. So you can see there are materials there that really look at the lay beginnings of Methodism. I went and took some pictures. You can see my own work here. John Street claims to be organized from 1766, which is the Embry class meeting in his home, but the building and the congregation in this location is really from 1768. I took some portraits of the museum there in John Street. There's a lovely museum and a really lovely set of portraits of Embry and Barbara Heck. You don't usually see such a flattering portrait of her, and I included that in my book. So it's worth a trip if you're ever in New York City. They're very hospitable, and you can learn a lot about early Methodism. The original pulpit and communion rail and a chair from the period, as well as Wesley's gift to the congregation, a clock there, are still in the museum there. So these were the original liturgical furniture, the original pulpit of the John Street Church, built by Philip Embry himself. Pretty neat. This is Wesley's clock. That was a gift from Wesley. It's not a great portrait of myself there, as I'm taking it with my cell phone, and cell phones were not very good in those days. But you can see the clock there in the back, and you can also see Johns Creek is the object of a lot of love and affection for the church, particularly since it's the closest church to the 9/11 and to the Wall Street 9/11 World Trade Center disaster. They've really suffered. They were an area where people could convene and do work, grief and therapy work with the neighborhood there, and so the congregation's been through a lot of trauma in the last few years, and so the churches are praying for them and showing connectionalism. And that clock is also connectionalism. When Embry and Webb began the church, they called it Wesley Chapel in an attempt to get Wesley to provide finances for it, as well as perhaps preachers long term, and instead he sent this clock which still works all these years ago. It keeps accurate time, and Wesley had inscribed on it his favorite scripture, "Be also ready, for in such an hour as you think not the Son of Man cometh." So watch your time. Matthew 24:44. You can see the sanctuary here, not in a very good portrait, but this is from 1841. Here is a early insignia of the Methodist Church. Well, this is Bishop Asbury's stirrup. We'll get to Asbury later.